Hello there. We've just staged one of the most celebrated Commonwealth Games in this country. But more importantly, we probably, as a sporting nation, have punched way, way above our weight. Now, a lot of that is based on lottery funding, which has probably made our athletes more professional. How would that change in independent Scotland?
Well, I am one of these folk who take a lottery ticket every week. And I don't anticipate any problems whatsoever. Actually, I'm in the Irish lotto as well, by the way. It comes from a father. He was always at Hugh Bell, the bookies in here. So there is no problem. And if you think about, if you're running the national lottery, are you going to say, I'm going to cut the level of my business because I don't like the way they folk voted? Of course you're not. You're going to say, well, that's okay, there's no problem, cross-border, one-to-one, sterling, no problem whatsoever. So I am hoping to continue. If I don't win the lottery this time, I'm hoping that whatever date it is after the 18th, down goes my 6 numbers again.
The gentleman next to you in the dark jacket, and then yourself in the corner on the red.
David Cameron has promised us a referendum in Europe in a couple of years. If we vote for independence, we don't get the referendum in Europe. Are we exchanging one master for 28 other masters if we attempt to join Europe?
Can I just, maybe I was going to come in. Well, we're already in Europe, so you're not really exchanging 1 for 28. You already live with the 28. Yeah. Well, coming back to my husband being German, I make good use of him. He's not here tonight. He's got a night off. We went to East Berlin about 8 weeks after the wall came down, and I can tell you the centre of East Berlin was black, was sooty. There wasn't a single shop open. There was nothing you could buy. People queued up at the kind of bread dispensary shops. Nothing we would have recognised as a shop. They voted in March 1990, so 4 months after the wall came down, to be unified. They had unification on the 3rd of October. That's 6.5 months later. Europe opened their arms and took in 14 million people and companies that didn't meet a single EU regulation, a government that had been known for human rights abuses with the Stasi, with spying on their own people, torturing their own people, and yet they were just welcomed into Europe. And you think that 18 months is not time for us, who have been citizens for 40 years, our companies meet all of the regulations. As Graham Avery has written time and time again in the papers, and he's a senior commissioner who's been part of 20 of the 28 accessions, we don't just fall out of Europe. We would have to be written out of Europe. When Greenland left Denmark, they had to make effort to do that. So they would have to spend a year and a half going, all the water here except Scotland's water, all of this except Scotland. They would have to do a lot of work to write us out of every single EU treaty. And the EU is based on realpolitik and practicality. As he said, the idea they'd spend 18 months writing us out, knowing the plan was 2 years later to spend another 18 months writing us back in, is just nonsense. They will find a way, as Europe always does, to work through it so that we remain in. It'll be our choice in the long term whether we stay in, but we will not get kicked out of Europe.
Just before I take a question from the man in the red, I'm sensing from your reactions that you're opposed to European Union membership, yes. And I think that, well, I can guarantee there'll be some people in this room that agree with sentiments, some will oppose, and as Philippa said, in the long run, we will vote for parties who put it in their manifestos whether or not Scotland will be a part of Europe. and it will be the people of Scotland who will decide whether or not we're in Europe. It will not be the people of the South East, as is going to be the case in 2017. We will decide our future.
Yeah. One of the main problems that I see is everybody's come here tonight and the arguments are pretty convincing. But the problem that we seem to have is getting these arguments heard in the mainstream media. What's the plan for that? Because if we can't get this message across the mainstream media, unfortunately, we might be back here in 20 years. So what's the strategy for that? Because I watched the debate last week, and Alex Salmon, sad to say, but he never got the points across that you guys have made tonight.
Well, really, the best way for us to get the arguments across is for us all to be remembering what's being said tonight, remembering the statistics, the arguments, everything to be said, and talking to people. We will not be the silent majority. We are the campaign that is wanting change, a positive change, and the way we don't need the media, because we are the ones that we can go around doors and we can talk to people. And I don't know about you, but if someone was to come to my door saying vote yes because this, I would listen to that much more than the media saying vote no because this, even though they're in a position of power. We all need to look at some of their history to see how corrupt they are.
Okay. Yeah, on you come.
We have a situation in Scotland where people vote for who their father voted for, who their grandfathers voted for. Okay? Probably the majority of people aren't motivated enough to get out there, come to meetings like this, read, study, do whatever's required to make their own decisions. So if we can't get this message across, and I'm sad to say, at the moment, we seem to be losing the battle, because the papers, the news, the television, and we had an opportunity last week, and we didn't take it.
Well, can I give you a bit of history? It's really quite important, because it's relevant to what's happening in Scotland now. During the Vietnam War, Lyndon Johnson was President of the United States, and he decided to run for re-election and went into the primary in the small state of New Hampshire. A senator called Eugene McCarthy, not the Joe of notoriety, Eugene MacArthur, decided to oppose him. As President, Johnson had all the money required to swamp the television and the radio as you can do in America. Eugene had no money at all. The opinion polls during the campaign said he'd be lucky if he got more than 10%. He got 42%. And the reason was he had no money, but he had 3,000 young students who were chapping doors and ringing bells. And in my experience of politics, there's nothing better than human-to-human contact. Somebody knocking your door and bothering to come. Now, the relevance in our campaign is that the media is doing the same as they did in New Hampshire. They are talking to each other. One says they're not doing well, look at the polls, and the other reports it, and so the cycle goes. But actually what's happening all over Scotland are meetings like this and door knocking going on with thousands and thousands of people involved. I've never experienced anything like this in my whole life, what's happening. And what's happening is below the media's radar. They don't know about it. I mean, I had somebody on from one of the radio stations in the back of the Margot Mobile today, who was utterly astonished at the reaction we were getting in the streets when we took it in and I made speech and 12 people went up and down the street knocking doors and talking to folk and saying, listen to what's being said, these are the facts. So we're not in the position you're afraid that we're in, relying on that media.
So why did you get the facts out last week in the debate?
Well, he failed. There's another debate to come. And one...
Maybe you should have a substitution then.
No. The Alex Salmon that I know will have gone off and said to himself, looking in the mirror, I didn't do well, and you watch it next time, I think you'll find that it'll be an entirely different Alex Salmon.
Philippa, you should maybe write a speech for him.
I think that Alex Salmond is more of a chess player than you're giving him credit for. And I think we need to hold our nerve and not chew our own feet off at this stage. We need to remember that while we've been out and doing this, you know, for the last 2 years to some extent, certainly for me, pretty active since the beginning of the year, and since my wee video went viral, absolutely mental since May. I feel it's about a year since May. For other people, it's only starting now. There's a lot of people where it's, well, get the school holidays, get the games over, kids are back, 5 weeks, I'll have a wee look now. And there are a lot of people, obviously there are people who, as I said, you know, are heart and flag and Queen British, and of course they should vote no. But there are lots of people who are the, ooh, no, I don't want to think about that. And they're going to realise the better in Better Together is not any vision of us being better. This is as good as it gets, and as the lights go out across Scotland, we might help you with your benefits. That's the better. It's a threatening better. It's a, you better know, or we'll chip you. That's the better. And as people start to realise that it is still relentlessly negative, they will bang into this, because the people I work with in YesTroon, well, I work with, I'm swanning around doing meetings, they're doing all the work. They delivered these leaflets to every door in Troon. There's people putting things through every door across Scotland. And there are areas that radical independents have gone into where no politician has bothered to go for decades. And what they say is, wow, no one else has ever been to my door. And those people will take the time and listen. And all of you who maybe heard a fact that someone at work is always throwing at you, and you thought, well, that's the answer to him, is you need to go in and say, I heard the answer to that thing you're always throwing at me. You all who have become yes or were yes have to go out of here as ambassadors tonight to think, who's the one person that Margot said, if everyone converts one person, you need to think, who's the one person in your life that you can go. Maybe you won't turn them to a yes, but if you turn them to a don't know, if you give them some of the leaflets, they'll make maybe the rest of the way by themselves. That's what we have to do. We don't have the media, but in the last few weeks, when we are out, that's what they don't have. They don't have this, and that's what we're counting on.